And we are live, and welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this morning's Behind the Markets. We are back to regular programming. I know that we were on a bit of a tear, and we were going through the art of discipline for a while, and I think we'll finish that off today. Should we have a little bit of time? But today we'll be touching on the regular Enterprise Thursday conversations. But Vernon, it is a Thursday morning, 6th of July. How you doing, my brother?
We're doing great. We're doing fantastic. I think I'm excited seeing how things are flowing so far in the second quarter. I think there's so much to look out for, essentially, and a lot of positioning.
Well, my brother, it is the third quarter actually. Now we're in quarter three. This is the second half of the year. Everybody, just remember that it was half time last week. We have now kicked off the second half, and remember that a game can still be won in the second half. If you remember the old Champions League game, Liverpool versus AC Milan, I think you understand. I think Lucky can reference that one very well. You understand that you can always come back in the second half and you can win the game. Let's kick off today and let's get through some of the data that's actually on the market. It is Enterprise Thursday, and let's kick off today. We did see that the kwacha has continued its loss-making territory, down 0.8% from where it closed on Friday. 2.6% up. The dollar is up 2.6% from where it was 7 days ago, and we are down 10.46% mainly because of the news of the deal. But it appears that we're still going on a negative position, heading towards 18 again. So we haven't really gotten a full swing of inflows of FX inflows, but we should at least have less FX outflows coming in from the government paying debt. Remember, that's the main thing. One of the main things that the minister actually pointed out even over the weekend is that we were supposed to be paying about 6 billion. We're supposed to be paying $600 million in debt repayments a year. Now that has come down to 75 million. So there's less government outflow and there's a lot more multilateral support that's coming in. But we are still seeing currently that the kwacha is still losing value in the meantime. So unfortunately, everybody has a microwave mentality where we just have this view that the moment a policy comes out, bing, the same time it takes to heat food, that is the same amount of time a policy should take to work. That is what we need to get rid of as a mindset, because nothing that is valuable works that quickly. Okay, nothing that is valuable. I think everyone needs to come and get that into their mind. The year to date, we have seen the dollar is down 2.03%. We are still on a selling pattern of the dollar. It is still negative flows, but we are in the short run starting to see that it is moving in a positive. In the dollar's moving in a buying direction at the moment. But remember that once this all starts to cool off, it's a different story. OSHA index yesterday didn't move, but it stayed flat. We have got some announcements of results that have come in from last week, which we are just analyzing, and we'll be breaking them down throughout the following week. It is ZCCM, Zambeef, and we have gotten some results from Airtel. Mid-year results have started to trickle out as we're starting to see, but we are starting to get some early results coming out, and we'll be going through those carefully. Bond market is up 0.29%, both in dollars and in kwacha, but interest rates are also up 0.12%. I'm going to explain why we're going to see elevated interest rates for a little bit longer, people, a little bit longer. We're still expected to see elevated interest rates, so this is still a good time to still buy up your fixed income assets going forward. Now, going into the things like the rand, we have seen the rand was up 1.74% yesterday, up 1.27% on the week, but still down 7.43% on the month. So this is cross-border trader activity. This already says what we're expecting to see from those who go to South Africa and buy up products, but still down 11.26% year to date. So the rand is still having a very weak period against the kwacha, but we are still seeing momentum on the upward side. So the rand is testing that one kwacha, that parity. The rand kwacha parity is still on the test, while we are still seeing that the dollar seems to always get to about 18. And then that's where the pushback begins. So it does appear about 18, 19 is where the strong pushback begins. But now we've gotten the deal. We've gotten everything. Now we're waiting for the final thing, which is the creditor. Remember that Zambia is not going to get re-rated until it gets creditor, until it gets its private euro bond holders to agree to a deal. And currently those negotiations are going on. And I'm going to point out something that may add a tad bit of a complexity to that. There might be a little bit of a complexity to that euro bond deal. Now, GRZ bond index, as I said, was up 0.29%, up 13.67% year to date. The US dollar index in bonds, the bond index in dollars is up 0.29% as well, but down up 16.91% year to date. And we're also seeing the GRZ bond yields also up 0.116%. That was up yesterday. Mainly, that was up over the weekend. There is a little bit of a sell-off happening on the secondary market, but year-to-date interest rates up 0.55%. So we've pretty much been flat at this 24% place for quite some time in our bond market. Now, on commodities, we did see that copper has stayed relatively flat, somewhere around 8,325, down on the year 0.57%. So copper has been neutral throughout the year. Oil was up 1.92% in the middle of yesterday, but it is struggling to break away, mainly because fears of a recession are stronger than what we're seeing in terms of the cuts coming from Russia and Saudi Arabia. So oil is up to $76.63, while we're also seeing gold up 0.05%. Gold up 0.05%, obviously, as they're waiting a bit more Fed data. Now, there is news that the Federal Reserve team are actually seeing that there are still more rate hikes on the way for the rest of the year. Cryptocurrency, Bitcoin is up 0.3%, up 79.6% year to date. But on the last quarter, we have seen a little bit of a stranglehold. But Bitcoin has maintained the above 500,000 for a little bit of time now. So we are starting to see that kind of recover. Ethereum still up above 30,000, up 0.2% yesterday and 55.91% year to date. I always tell people, this part does look attractive, but if you only look at rates of return and you do not look at volatility, you are shooting yourself in both feet and expecting to run a marathon. Okay, so be very careful about this. Be very careful about seeing 79.6%. Yeah, I'm going to get rich. That is how you get that. That's exactly how you stay poor. That is exactly how to be poor. So just avoid trying to get rich overnight and make sure you utilize this as a diversification play and as a hedging against your broad market downturns. That is all this is good for now. People, these are not tested assets. Gold is still there as a tested asset, but it's also a hedge. It's a disaster hedge against geopolitical issues and geopolitical tension that you're starting to see, trade wars, issues between countries. Up 0.85%, gold up to gold in Kwacha, 34,208. Up 3.51% year to date. It's lost a lot of its value because of the shrink in the dollar. So when you look at where we are as of yesterday, 5th of July, 2023, year to date, we're still seeing the stock market 12.3%, bond market 13.7%, gold up only 3.5%, dollars down 2%, and it's the crypto assets up 79.7%, mainly because of the first quarter. But if you look at the second quarter, they had a horrible run because they actually lost all their gains. They lost about 20% of their gains. Ethereum also lost about 30% of its gains in the second quarter. So if you look at Q2 behavior, these assets did have a tough swing in Q2. Now, taking a look at our four horsemen quickly before we round up this section, we did see that South African PMIs came in still negative, but higher at 48.7. That's good for inflation because that means production might be improving. European PPIs declined again to 1.5%. While we saw headwinds, headwinds in the international trade as EU, UK, German, and EU, UK, Italian, and German composite PMIs all declined, with the EU ones down to 49.9 in the negative. Italian still positive, but coming down at 52.8. It's UK positive, but 52.8. Italian down to 49.7, and German still positive, but down to 50.6. US Red Book sales did rise, but only by 0.7%. In Spanish, industrial production declined by 0.1%. Those were the negatives that actually kicked in yesterday. And our first deep dive that we're going to crack into before we get on to our break for all of us here is that government has been did announce. We did read in our news articles yesterday. The government did announce that it is working on trying to cut back on job losses at First Quantum. Now, job cuts come as a result of consolidation at Kansanshi PLC. Now, these are obviously announcements that have been made earlier, and we'll also be looking at some of this data coming out of the ZCCM financials after we do our weekend analysis. Some jobs are going to be redefined or adjusted, while others may just be transferred to a new entity. While now this is obviously causing a bone of contention because mines have been given quite a lot of tax treatment. There has been a lot of relief that has come in terms of taxes towards the mines, and as a result, we would be expecting that they wouldn't be cutting jobs when they've been given that much leeway. only to turn around and start saying, "Oh well, we've got to lay off people." These are some of the issues that you're trying to hope for because we're already getting less taxes from them because of lower production. Obviously, the hope is that they're going to start picking up production on the other side of things. On the other side of things, they should be starting to pick up production, especially on the other side of 2025. But you're not expecting them to start cutting jobs because the expectation is to start stimulating the economy. Now, this is what we've kept on saying, Vernon. If we're going to start improving the economy, this is why I've been stressing taxes for SMEs should be improving. Now, I just want to make one announcement about tomorrow's show. Everybody who is checking in, tune in tomorrow. I'm going to be giving you my budget submission. I actually made budget submissions for 2024, and I'm going to be sharing those on air so that I can take you through what I think should be in budget 2024. You're going to want to tune in for that one because these are some of the policies we'd like people to start advocating for because they help savers and entrepreneurs. But on the other side of things, Vernon will be getting back onto our deep dives, and then we'll be getting into our topic of discussion. See you on the other side.
All right. And returning to the conversation today. All right.
Thank you very much, Vernon. And we are right back. Thank you very much for everybody who's still with us. And as we're talking about, we were going through the story of job losses coming in. Other news that did come out yesterday is Angola DRC. Sorry about that. We did slip that. Angola DRC Angola DRC and Zambia to launch the concession of the Lobito Port and Railway project. It was stated yesterday by the private sector development chair, Mr. Yusuf Duria, that by developing the railway system from Chingola to Solwezi to Mulidunga and Angola, the Lobito corridor provides opportunities for export for products such as sugar, cement, and other agricultural products. Obviously, he said the majority of our copper goes to China. But I also do think that the reason why the West has also invested in things like the Lobito corridors because they also want access to those minerals too. They want direct access to minerals. So if they can open up the Atlantic, it allows them to kind of drift them to the the western side of the world. So we might be seeing that by the opening of that corridor, that might actually now create increased competition for our minerals, and that gives us a bit more negotiating room. So if we're smart about it, we can play it well. However, one of my main points about the Lobito corridor is that it is expected to also line up with the 2026 completion of the Lobito refinery in Angola, which is supposed to pump out 200,000 tons, 200,000 barrels of oil per day. This is that Zambia has invested in, and it's also expected to help structurally bring prices down of oil. So if you can transport agricultural products that away, hopefully that means oil can come back this away. So that's the important part of this conversation as well. So that's also quite strategic. So picking up on that, that might help. Remember that the part of the main growth story going forward is that not only are we going to see copper prices going up at about 2025 onwards, we're expected to see oil prices coming down, and we've also invested in structurally bringing oil prices down, and we've also invested in bringing down fertilizer prices in this country. So you've got fertilizer prices down, oil prices down, copper prices up. That's a stronger economy. Zambia is built on the commodity picture. How do we get cheap commodities coming in, and how do we get our commodities to be expensive going out? That's very simple. It's very simple, Vernon, even for an individual. How do you get your salary up? How do you get your cost of things down? That makes you wealthier. Okay, that's the game, or that gives you more money. You may end up just partying it, as we tend to do as people. Now, the other news that we did see also coming in from Reuters, we did see that Zambia says that Vedanta and Zambia are having. So Vedanta and Zambia's dispute resolution might be coming to a close very soon. Talks are also stated. This was also a statement that came out by the Minister of Mines, according to Reuters. We're just trying to track on all of this. But talks would also resolve KCM's outstanding payments to suppliers and contractors and technical aspects of operations. This is actually quite important because KCM currently owes Copperbelt Energy Corporation $160 million. So there's a huge debt that they're outstanding here. And for CEC investors, this is a very important piece of news, because should this come to a resolution and there is a deal struck, that means that CEC cash flows start to improve as well. So you got to see how this flips from the other side. Now, a deal would also help unlock Konkola Deep Mining Project, which holds the world's richest deposits, but requires an investment of 1.1 billion, KCM said last year. So this is part of the bigger negotiations and the broader negotiations. But obviously, people were not happy with the way things turned out in 2019, the pollution, the poor management that led to the state taking over the mining operation. But it has been sitting in limbo since then. Now, for Zambia to ramp up to 3 million tons, remember that we're trying to, by 2025, get a lot more copper production out. Because if we can get a lot more copper production out, it would require that KCM is back. It would require that Mopani is back. Mopani is currently loss-making, according to the ZCCM financials. To get Mopani and KCM and Kansanshi all running together while reinvesting. Now, I am also curious to wait for H1 ZCCM results, because I would like to see the impact to the company of the flow of the royalties. That 3%, 3.1% royalty, and what that's doing to the cash flow, because then it sets the stage for what you can do for companies like KCM, what you can do with companies like Mopani, to make sure that there's a stronger cash flow coming into the country, that extra 3% or so. And in fact, with ones like KCM, you can even negotiate a little bit higher. But it actually does give a strong royalty play that can stand for each of these, especially if they are sitting with investor groups. So I am thinking that let's take a look at the success of the royalty deal that is happening on Kansanshi and see if it can be replayed onto the others. I know that these socially conscious pump your fists up, where the freedom fighters on social media will come after me on that, but please, the last time they've hurt anyone is never. So I think the important thing is that the country needs to maximize, and what I've often said is that this requires that even us as the investor class to start rumbling in and making sure that we're buying up as much of these assets as possible, even on the stock market. But for now, I think the first thing that we should be paying attention to, as I said, is how this is actually going to play out and how maybe even those negotiations can come into this. Now, one of the biggest stories, actually, I think, which is quite important for Zambia, especially as I'm talking about credit and negotiations with our Euro bondholders, is S&B's global credit conditions statement for Q3 2023. I said it'll be higher interest will longer fuel rate divergence. So, in other words, there is a divergence that is going to reflect in our negative bias, and it's showing that investment grade, in other words, A-rated instruments, A-rated, A-rated, actual investment grade, they are going to have interest rates of about 6%, but high of 9.2%. But those with poor ratings, and remember that Zambia's rating is currently for our government bonds is currently triple C. Now, if you're looking at, well, that's according to Fitch, but if you're looking at this one, this B minus rating, they're saying anything that is B minus or less is going to attract 35.4% interest right now. 35. So if you think about that very carefully, currently the return on investment on our bonds is somewhere around 19, 18%. So if we are not giving out 35% at the moment, until we get a much higher rating, we are not going to attract investment. We're not going to attract as much inflow as we may have thought. So currently, especially from those who are strict on all of these, and they're expecting much higher interest rates. So it does look that like high interest rates in the low rated instruments, such as Zambia, who is in the process of restructuring. So I don't see interest rates coming down yet. It does appear that we're going to see interest rates only start to come down probably in the next year until this cools off. But currently, the credit environment is still high risk. In fact, there's the expectation that defaults will pick up because we have not seen the full impact of interest rates, which have now started to affect erosion of debt servicing capacity. The forecasts actually by S&P are that we're going to see in the US 4.2% more defaults, and we're going to see 3.6% rise in defaults in Europe, with Latin America expected to default even more. Emerging markets are under pressure right now, with expectations that if defaults are going to pick up. Now, the bond investors are still having a very strong appetite to make strong investments out. But until we start to see interest rates pull down in the developing world, we are going to see this very expensive global credit sitting out there, 35.4% for anything B graded and lower. And trust me when I tell you this, Zambia is way lower than B minus. We are way lower at the moment. And even if these things get clipped back, we are not going to be above B minus. That is for sure. So we are currently sitting on the 35.4% expectations of investment. So right now, risk premiums are still very high. There's a huge divergence between investment grade assets and between the kind of junk status or the kind of regular status that we're seeing. So because of our weak rating, this is the kind of interest that offshore investors are expecting to try and get in Zambia, 35.4% annually. So one, we have to keep a very strong FX rate to do that. And two, that is still not going to be enough to bring them in. So for us, currently, the triple C rating on our government bonds is not enough to attract. This is already that's telling us why we're failing to see offshore participation in our government bonds. So let's see what kind of rating will come out of our creditor negotiation. Should that not yield anything above B minus? I don't see for the rest of the year, at least quarter three. I mean, after quarter four, we're not gonna be getting much coming in terms of inflows in our bond market. So what does this say to the person who's now still investing? It means higher interest rates for longer means you still buy up your bonds. You still buy them up so that when you are transitioning to the stock market or when you are now building out into a bit more risk into your portfolio, when you do that, you are starting from a position of a very strong cash flow generating bond base. So buy up as much of the fixed assets that you can so that when you are transitioning away and you're taking risks, you've got a very strong base and you're practicing what we call the barbell strategy. Okay, so this is a very key story that has come out today that will actually affect quite a lot of people. News that's come out in Africa is Nigerian inflation is set to reach 25% in 2023 due to fuel subsidy removal. Nigerian inflation may be the highest in Africa in 2023. Commodity prices are expected to rise in 2023, mainly due to fuel prices rising. Fuel prices did move from 189 naira to 500 naira, and it is expected to cool off with inflation in Q1 2024. So they are expecting that the effects of this shock event of fuel will start to come down in Q1 in 2024. Other news is that China's export controls of gallium and germanium exports, sorry, got that wrong. Gallium and germanium exports could cause a rise in solar panel prices. Yesterday, Mr. Trevor Ambai did actually say in our news reading that we don't produce solar panels. So if this is going to actually cause a problem in solar panel prices. Now, China has slapped export controls on rare earth metals critical to semiconductor production, mainly on security controls. Obviously, these are issues, security concerns. These are the semiconductor battles that are happening in America. Remember, every piece of electronics has a chip in it. So that is where the biggest battle is going to be. Trillions of chips moving around the world. Whoever is controlling those chips is controlling society. So that is why it's become a huge concern. That's why Taiwan is at the center of so many things. This is the biggest battleground that you are starting to see. Other news we did see also in the market is that UK is still the only G7 economy dealing with rising inflation. Now, everyone is dealing with high inflation, but the UK is dealing with rising inflation. UK May inflation rose from 7.8 to 7.9%, while average inflation in the G7 countries was 5.7%. OECD inflation fell to 6.7%, but the UK is battling and struggling with food costs that are at multi-decade. We're talking about 45-year high. Food inflation is actually ripping through the UK right now. We've gone through that, but remember, global food prices are starting to come down. Now, that has been our main news run today, but the biggest story obviously is that the S&P rating is showing that 35% for anything B minus or lower. Zambia, that means the global environment is still very hostile to making investments in areas like that. So figure it out. Our figure for today is 32% of business startups. Success depends on teams, talents, and execution, making it the second most important factor behind market timing. The source is called The Single Biggest Reason Why Startups Succeed, a TED Talk by William T. Gross, who surveyed 200 major startups in the US to try and get to this data. And this is a key factor even around the world, that teams and executions are often what venture capital is looking for. Venture capital is looking for a well-timed product which has proven product market fit. One. Two, they're looking for a team that can execute well on this product. Okay, these are the two most important investable factors that lead someone to invest equity into your business. One, have you proven product market fit? Two, do you have a team they can trust to execute? So these are two critical factors. They actually make up a lot of the success factor. The idea itself is cool, but you can have a wonderful idea, but if there's no market for it, you're singing to the chairs. If you can have a wonderful idea, but if there's no team. So timing and teams are the two most important factors. So we've been talking about teams going forward. Last week we did actually have a conversation about whether it's good to start solo or teams. And what I've noticed in Zambia is everyone's gone through, so everyone's got scars when it comes to business with teams. I've been in a lot of businesses with people, but I still believe I'm a firm believer in teams. So I never give up. I always think you got to find the right person. I consider it like dating. You got to find the right person. You got to go through bad dates to get to the right one. So that's something we all want to think about going forward. Right. I don't know if we have Vernon here, but we're gonna be going through. Now we're going to be going through our chart of the day, which I will show is the rise of entrepreneurship in Zambia. So you can see that Zambian entrepreneurship has risen from a very low amount in 2017. And this is the breakdown by groups. You see the light blue one shows that the main entrepreneurial base of Zambia is men above the age of 35. So non-youth men. So this is men above 35, men below 35, women above 35, women below 35. And it shows that we've gone from we've gone from less than 100,000 entrepreneurs in Zambia. These are people who are employers, and we're defining an entrepreneur as an employer who actually has hired people to run their business. To operate their business, and they're no longer working for themselves. So we've gone from about 100,000 employers in Zambia to over 200,000 employers in this country, and this is part of our entrepreneurship space. So we've gone from 100,000 employers to over 200,000 employers. This is between 2017 and 2021. We have not gotten the latest labor force. This is labor force survey figures as of from 2017 to 2021. Now, the key factor with all of this information, with 208,000 people who actually are in the employer space, 209,000 people, so who actually are in the employer space, we are seeing that the fastest growth, we have seen a doubling in men above 35. And Vusi Tembakwa, I think, said this. He said, in as much as you switch on the TV and you're told Silicon Valley is always teenagers starting businesses in their dorm rooms, the average founder of a business is actually just slightly above 40. The average person who starts a business is in their 30s, late 30s, going into their 40s. The reason is the person has just gotten enough. They've gotten enough industry knowledge. They've got enough industry recognition, and they know the supply chains well enough to be able to then form a business around it. So they can obviously obtain some founder market fit to be able to start. But we have this idea that entrepreneurs, because we have this idea of being young and being powerful and everything, but the average person who goes and starts a business that is of any significance and actually lasts, by the way, is usually a person somewhere in their mid 30s. And you can see in Zambia, statistically, it's a man above 35. The most likely entrepreneur is a man above 35. They make up just over 40 something percent of entrepreneurs. In fact, if we break it down, we'll see it here. That percentage has started to come down, but men still make up about 60% of entrepreneurs in this country. Sorry, not 60, 70% of entrepreneurs. 7 out of every 10 entrepreneurs in Zambia is a man, but it used to be about 53% of them were men above 35. Now we're looking at about 43% of them, 43 to 44% of them are men above 35. So this is the composition breakdown by gender and age group of the entrepreneurial base of Zambia, just so that we understand who we're dealing with here. It was still about 79, was 73% in 2017, has gotten as high as actually as high as 79% in terms of men, but we're still about 70% men entrepreneurs. We have seen a growth in young women entrepreneurs. In young women entrepreneurs who've gone from 9.1% to about 12.3%, but it stayed stuck with women above 35. So somewhere in there, we're dealing with young women who are rising in the game of entrepreneurship and developing jobs for one another. And remember, I have defined it. Remember, we did say, and we used the 4-quadrant definition. If you work for yourself, you're self-employed. If you work by yourself, you are self-employed. You can be a professional who has an apprentice. You can be if you have a few employees, you're a business owner. If you've got managers and employees, you're an entrepreneur. So we're using business owners and entrepreneurs, the people who've got employees. So that's what we're looking at, the people in our system who are employers. And employers currently, this is the breakdown. Now, when we're looking at how entrepreneurship has grown as in terms of the percentage of the adult population, it was a very unpopular thing in 2012 and 2014, where only 1 in 3 adults in Zambia was an entrepreneur. In other words, not 1 in 3. That's a very wrong statement. 1 in 300. Okay, 1 in 333 adults was an entrepreneur in Zambia. 1 in 333. Those are the numbers in 2012 and 2014. It has appeared that due to a slow economy and tough times, and this is a funny thing that happens with Zambia. When the economic times are tough, we start businesses. The moment things get good, we mothball our businesses and start looking for jobs. It's the weirdest thing that happens to us as people. So one of the problems I think I see with Zambian entrepreneurship is that it is not based on solving problems in society and a desire to actually do something in society that is of significance. It is designed as a survival technique. such that when jobs come back into the economy, people pack up these businesses, run away, and then rush back into the job market. And then that creates a stagnant job market again, because then we're all rushing for the same jobs. We swamp out the job markets. And this is what happened in 2005. Zambians were struggling for a long period of time, started businesses. We moved from 5,000 business owners to 40,000 business owners. IMF deal comes, jobs come back into the country, people pack up their businesses and rush back into the job market. So we need to find a way to inculcate entrepreneurship in such a way that it's not a response to adversity, but it is more a desire to do something significant in society. That's what we need to switch this from, because there's a weird narrative now that's actually brewing in our country. So my worry is, in as much as we've seen entrepreneurship pick up from 0.3% of the general population to 2.5% of the adult population, which is a good percentage, will this hold if times get good? If all of a sudden big businesses run into Zambia, open up and start offering jobs to people, will people keep their businesses running, or will they rush? Will they lock up their businesses and rush into the job market to go and start looking for jobs for comfort? And therefore, we've abandoned the ability to build the entrepreneur base. Because if you lack an entrepreneur base as a country, if you do not have enough people building businesses, you will always have a youth unemployment problem. So to get out of this youth unemployment problem, we need a bunch of entrepreneurs who are there to stay. That's what we really need. We need entrepreneurs who are there to stay, who are actually there to build businesses, not just for lifestyle. And this is why, again, Vusi had this conversation as well on the radio, I think on an old station, where he said you can either be a legacy or you can either be a lifestyle entrepreneur. And it does appear there's a lot of lifestyle entrepreneurship in Zambia. There's a lot of it. So such that the moment somebody's offered a job, off they're gone. And that's where this is where the struggle comes. It becomes very difficult to build a job base in this country if we don't have entrepreneurs who are in it for the full race, who are, and I know that entrepreneurship is a very tough thing. This is why we always need to advocate for the agencies and regulatory authorities and the people in this country to back off. Because what you don't understand is that it's already hard to start a business in this country. It's already very difficult to start a business in this country. And entrepreneurs, as Dumisani says, are national assets that must be cultivated. They need to be nurtured. They need to be taken care of, because this is what creates jobs for the future. This is what creates jobs for people's children. But if all of a sudden every single authority just wants to pound down on entrepreneurs who are trying to start something that will eventually grow into something that can hire people, something that can solve problems in society, then you are killing the growth. And then people just say, you know what? Why should I start this business? Why should I face all these hurdles? Why should I? Why should I go through all of this when there are jobs sitting there in the market? And what I've actually noticed, that it is the regulatory authorities and all these people, and the councils, regulatory authorities, all these people who are so anti-entrepreneurship on the ground, who actually push people out of it and squeeze them into the job market, where they have to now go and fight for the same jobs over and over again. And we start seeing this widening inequality again in our country. So we're hoping that we have a more business-friendly approach that encourages entrepreneurship in society. What this may say also, if we're seeing this, because as I've said, 2017 to 2021 has been adversity for Zambia. This has been slow growth. This has been a tough time. It may appear that, as I said, entrepreneurship is not a culture, it's a reaction. Okay? It's not a culture in this country, it's a reaction. And it does appear that other countries have built entrepreneurship as a culture, while Zambians have entrepreneurship as a reaction to tough times. But when the environmental circumstances lapse, do we hold on to entrepreneurship, or do we go back to what we feel is comfortable? This is a conversation I think we really need to go deeper into as a country. So tell me, what are your thoughts? And this is a question I want to ask to everyone. What do you think? What do you think our view on entrepreneurship is? Do you think we have an entrepreneurship culture, or do you think we just react to entrepreneurship as a survival tactic? How do you think we view entrepreneurship as Zambia? In fact, Vernon, I'll ask you that question. Given this data that we're looking at, how do you think Zambians view entrepreneurship? Do you think it's a culture that we actually embrace and we go into regardless of the circumstances, or is it just a survival tactic when there's no jobs, all of a sudden we start businesses?
Yeah, I think it's good that you even pose it to to be open to people so they can give their takes on it. I think what even keeps us not in the business for long, for starters, is because we are getting into it. I would say for the wrong reasons. Quite okay, you're trying to survive by and have a little something going on, which is okay, which is good. But if the motive is not as strong enough to withstand challenges that are compounded in the business sector, you're likely to drop down. And like you said, if there are job offers, you drop the business and go get yourself, employed. So ultimately, I think it's more of an alternative. If you don't get paid, if you don't have an income, if you don't have a job, if you have not been employed yet, the best alternative for you to survive is probably you resorting to starting up a little business up until you find something. And actually, I've noticed with even students, I'm just doing this business so I can be able to finance my studies. And once I actually find a job, they choose down and they proceed to employment. And then afterwards, life gets tough, get chucked out of work again. They want to revert and start up a business again, which ultimately is not sustainable. Imagine if one could be consistent and grow it like that, they actually will not even depend on a job. I was talking to a few individuals which actually were sharing a little bit of insight about, not being employed or not being dependent on employment. One is in the entertainment industry, one is in the entrepreneurship, entrepreneur world. From the time she was as young, she narrated how she would sell little items as frizits. And earlier, like you mentioned, about solving a problem in society. What she saw was her school could not accord them enough time for the children to go and buy snacks outside. So what she did was she'd come with the snacks in her bag, and students or her fellow pupils could not walk out to go and buy stuff, but actually would just buy from her right in class, which was convenient and easy for them. So there she was trying to solve a problem for the people, and they were the young ones could buy from her. And moving forward, she continued with that trend even as she went to tertiary education. Now as we speak, she's got two stores trying to still end the problem in society. And this is why, even when she's encountered losses sometimes, when you encounter challenges, of course, talk about taxes, bills, rentals, and making sure that you also remit your returns and whatnot, she still is able to continue and sufficing in the business despite the economic hardships as well we're facing in the country. There she is still thriving because it's more than just an alternative means of income for her. There's more. She's trying to solve a problem, so she keeps at it. So I think what will keep you in a business ultimately is the reason why you started the business, and not getting into a business so that it can help you or as a by the way while you're trying to wait for your employment or your dream job to come around. I think the narrative there should be rejuvenated, maybe, or maybe contextualize it in a proper form.
I think you've gotten to something there. I've noticed this, that those who are in it for the real reason of something they truly believe in, when
Mm.
they face losses, they take those losses as part of the game and they bounce back. I've noticed that the true believers in entrepreneurship are people who can take the losses, even in a time where everyone, because Vernon, we've been there where people say, you just give up on it, go and find a job. This is what you get, that, and you get people who constantly do that. The same people, by the way, when you are successful, are going to turn around and say, I always believed in that one. We always knew he'd make it. Later was some money. That's I'm telling you, that's what you'll start to see. But I'm just telling you that. No, but to be honest, that is the narrative. Don't be
Mm.
in there for the props, don't be in there for the attention, don't be in there for the lifestyle. And where I think it hits people is when you're in it for the lifestyle, you will break. The moment it gets tough, you will break, and you will go back to, you go to something because you know what, a good job can offer me a lifestyle. So a good job market has become the deterrent for entrepreneurial growth in Zambia, simply because I think the issue is the cultural belief. But people, give us your thoughts. What are your thoughts on the question that we're posing to us as a group? What do you think Zambia's perspective of entrepreneurship is? One, is it a culture we truly believe in? Or two, is it just a reaction to unemployment? And the moment employment returns, we abandon it and then we go straight back into the job line. And yes, it is tough. I'm just telling you that it is a tough thing. It is a personal decision. We're not saying everyone should be an entrepreneur. No, 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 no. Nobody's saying that everyone should be. I think that's a bad idea also, because somebody actually has to work in these businesses. Otherwise, we're just all going to be self-employed traders, which used to be, by the way, the old economic system where everybody was self-employed and we just used to trade with one another. But currently, the organized system is through companies and platforms. But the question is, are we people who truly believe in entrepreneurship, or is it just something that we all rush to when things are tough? But do we truly aspire to it? Are we willing to take the battles of it? And even as a nation, because I'm telling you, I also get this feeling from the authorities of the country is that if you've ever spoken with a lot of the people who operate in these authorities, agencies, these quasi-government institutions, it's almost as though they despise the idea of a Zambian starting a business. I'm telling you, it's they speak almost, and I'm not talking about the highest level person. The highest level person sometimes is optimism. The people somewhere in the middle, they almost despise the Zambian starting stuff. They prefer a foreign company comes into Zambia, starts something, and hires Zambians. In fact, you're even seen as, have you noticed how you get more respect in your family for working for a multinational banking corporation than you do starting your own entity? Have you noticed that? You get
Yeah.
more respect from your family. So already that shows you the belief system here, that it's more important to work for an international institution who can pay you a salary and a pension and a lifestyle, make you the boss of your family's things, than to actually start your own thing. Now, I'm not saying the flip side is that your only entrepreneurs are great and people who are workers are nothing. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I think that people can achieve regardless of the channel they go through. I think that that's what we should actually be looking at. You can achieve regardless of the channels we go through. I think that what people should understand is that you can. Let me give you an example, Bernard. You can be a good doctor as a doctor who works for the government. You can be a great doctor as a doctor who works for the government. You can be a great doctor as a doctor who works for private, who works as an independent doctor. You can be a great doctor. You can be a doctor who starts a group of hospitals. Okay. You can actually be a doctor but you can still be a great doctor regardless. I don't think we should be judging you on which channel you used more than what you've achieved in your channel. That's what I think we should be judging you on. What you've managed to fulfill and achieve, and what you've done. If you're a great doctor in government hospitals, fantastic. If you're a great doctor as a private practice, you're on your own, fantastic. If you're a great doctor who has started hospitals of your own and you've built your own business and that thing, fantastic. I think each of them should be celebrated. But it appears it's like we're pitting them against each other, and it's an either or thing. Society needs people to work in business. Society needs people to start business. Society needs self employed business. It needs all of them. So I think we need to move away from this dogmatic thing. But I do think as a nation, we discourage people. That's what I'm saying. Even from authority level, family level, spouse level, your spouse will be against you and starting a business. And you'll get it from all ends of society. So I just want to get our pulse question, and we've got a few answers here. Chilufia Mulala has actually given us some answers here. We'll read us. Says, in my opinion, the biggest hurdle with entrepreneurship is that most of the people in society in society don't value entrepreneurship, and that is true. That's what we've been pointing out here. There's also a great aspect of fear of failure, and having a job seems secure. And Dumisani actually had an argument against that. He said, "How secure are you with these jobs these days? The way, like, we just read about 1,000 people whose jobs are on the line." And what he was trying to say is, in a business, have you know? He says the entrepreneur will fire themselves last. They'll fire themselves last. They'll quit before they give up. They would have fired everyone else first. So just remember that you'll get fired first. But she also writes here, someone would rather have a job that pays them 4 pin, for an example, than try out baking that will give them 4 times more in return. it's risk. I think it's also got to do with the risk perception that is out there. I think people don't understand these days the job market is also equally risky. People also get
Yeah.
laid off in jobs. People get laid off. People, it's actually a
Mhm.
reality now. Okay, I think people view jobs like this entitlement that lasts forever. Actually, your company can walk in today and say, "Here's your pension, here's your retrenchment. Peace out. We don't need you." And then, what do you do also when they automate your? And also, what do you do if they automate your job? I'm just telling you, what do you do if they automate your job? What if the bank you work for says, guys, do you realize that we don't need all these many tellers? We're just going to give agencies, booths and agencies. So, to all of you who work in the branches, consider this your last year. What are you going to do? So, I'm just telling everyone, I think everybody should be prepared to be self employed. I think every person in this world should be prepared to be self employed because those are realities. But anyway, Vernon, let's get into our topic of discussion today. And I have talked about the lasting of a business. For a business to last, we have been talking about teams. This time, because we've talked about discovering your market, we've talked about founder market fit, we've talked about problem solution fit, solving a problem. We've talked about making sure that that solution becomes a product that fits the market. Okay, so product market fit. Now we've gone on to the fourth fit, which is what we call team vision fit. So, in other words, if you have a vision for what you want to build, now Mark Andreessen says this. He says that when you're building a business, many people are out there, Vernon, trying to build companies. He was talking about raising capital. He says many people are out there trying to raise capital, build companies, all these things. But he says, people, the first thing you just want to build is a product because you can have a company, okay, but if you've got, and this is what happens, a lot of people register companies, but there's no product in there, there's no actual working product. So they start becoming, this is how you get the rise of the tenderpreneur, which is what we call the entrepreneur, but it's really a tenderpreneur. Okay, it's simply because somebody registered a business, they've registered this entity, but they've got no product in there, they haven't built an actual product. So I think this is what, and this is what actually I pick up very quickly, even on our culture of entrepreneurship. Do Zambians build businesses or do we actually even build products? Because I've noticed we don't seem to, and I'll ask this question to you, Vernon. Do we actually build products before we build businesses?
It's good actually you brought it into light as well. I think something I've noticed and why businesses just die down, prematurely is I witnessed this. It's a situation where Mutuale, you hear that I'm actually advertising for, a business or a contract to probably construct or build me a house. And then you go and create a first business proposal and a business plan and a profile. You submit to me, you get the tender, get the job done, low quality and whatnot, you get the money. And the next thing you know, there you go. You're lost. You don't know what else next because the motive of you creating that business wasn't to either create a product or a service to people, or no, it was just to get the money. So you do what is required to get the money, not to actually grow a business, probably even establish it into a legacy that you even leave off to your children. No, I don't think so.
So I think this is I think the core problem is one, and like I said, Mark Andreessen was actually in a conversation on Bloomberg Wealth where he said the foundations of a business are a good product and a good team. If a person can form a good product and a good team, that is the foundation of a lasting business. That is a long-term investable business. So one, we don't build products. Two, we definitely don't build teams. That's for sure. We go and just hire people, but we don't build an actual founding team who will work together and build this thing. So I've noticed that because that's also what keeps people in the game, a strong team. That keeps people in the game. So I think these are just the conversations that we should have. But I wanted to talk about the team's perspective of it. And these are what we call the 17 laws of teams. We're going to be going through these over some time over the next couple of weeks. I'm going to go through the first two to introduce it, and then we're going to be going through the next 15 over the next 3 weeks, law 3 to 5. But for now, we're going to start with the first two. These are John Maxwell's 17 laws of business and the 17 laws of teams. The first one he says is one is too small a number to achieve greatness. A great Chinese proverb agrees that behind any able man, there is always able men. Okay, behind any person who has achieved anything. John Maxwell actually said, for any person who comes up to him and says, I'm a self made man, he says, that's a shame. Because if you've done everything yourself, then you haven't done much. That was his that was his comeback to that. But basically, Andrew Carnegie said it marks a big step in development when you can realize that other people can help you do a better job than you could do alone. Other people, the hallmark of a very good person is somebody who can hire people who are smarter than them. Often, what we see, Vernon, is people like being the smartest person in the room. They like being the best person in the room. But when you can find a way to attract talent that's better than you in certain areas and utilize that talent well and cultivate that talent to reach their full potential, then you're good at building teams. Because that is what an entrepreneur is: one who builds products and builds teams. And then you build processes. There are three things you just have to build: you have to build a product, processes, and people. Teams of people. That's it. If you focus on these three areas, you've built a business. Okay, you've actually built one. It's just a company is just nothing, Vernon, but products, processes, and people. That's it. I keep telling people a business is a problem solved with a product, built with a process, executed by people. I've added that extra one there. That's it. If you just build products, processes, and people, you've created a company. So if you try and make it too much of a big thing, that may be the issue. I think that comes down to it. Finally, I'll give you law number two: the big picture. The goal is more important than the role. If a team is to reach its full potential, each player must be willing to subordinate his personal goals to the good of the team. This is a book of old football wisdom. Ray Kroc, who was the founder of McDonald's, said, no one of us is more important than the rest of us. So in other words, you can't be a one-man warrior, even in a football team. You can't be a one-man warrior. The team's goal of winning must be the most important thing to you. Okay, that's what makes you a better player. So finally, Vernon, let's get into the final comments that people have in some of this. We've got a few more. So Mopiri has added to the question that we've asked here. Most people treat entrepreneurship like a backup plan. It is something that it's like something to fall on. For me, entrepreneurship is a culture and a way of life. I must create for others and contribute to the economy. We need our own economy, and entrepreneurship is key. It is true. You cannot capture the wealth. Here's the problem, people. Zambia's economy will grow the same or even bigger than it did last time between 2003 and 2013 and 2004 and 2013. But I'll tell you, China managed to convert their 2003 to 2013 economic growth into a reduction from 88% poverty to 36% poverty. Why? Because China owns all of its businesses. 95% of Chinese listed companies are owned by Chinese. The majority of Chinese economic activity is owned by the Chinese. So the profits stayed in China. The banks were filled with Chinese-owned deposits. In Zambia, profits leave. Banks are full of capital from other people. Stock markets are owned by other people. Okay? So that means that whenever the economy grows, all that profit leaks. It runs out of the country. That's the way the problem sits down. So you need to capture as much of the profit as possible through ownership. Ownership of products, ownership of businesses, ownership of everything. Finally, Aaron, the final comment that we have today, Aaron has written, good morning to you. Awesome moment. Greeting to you, Madam Ednora Chica, the general manager of Peach. Yeah, I think we'll catch you there. Thank you very much. And this is somebody who's actually running something themselves. Thank you very much for joining us all today. So yes, answer the question for us. We'll be asking it as well, even on our page. Give us your thoughts. Do we act as though entrepreneurship is a culture, or do you think it's just a reaction to unemployment? That's a very important question for us here today. Vernon, final thoughts before we bounce away, my brother.
I was looking at something on social media that is the trending how to put this, something that looks like the most latest iPhone, but then it's not. It's an Android. And guess what? Actually, it is being created or assembled in China. And then people are laughing, saying China made this look like or look alike of an iPhone. But then I thought through it. I saw a young lady, not over 30, no, very young, who was actually assembling everything else. And I'm thinking, as much as you are laughing at these guys, they were creative enough and they actually tried. So, in other words, we should be admiring them and probably wanting to learn from them and not laughing that actually they were able to create something like that. That's being innovative. You cannot tell the difference. It looks
I
the
don't
same.
think a country with 90% poverty should be laughing at a country with 20s. I just don't think you should. I think we should be very careful in the position we're in, laughing at people who got out of poverty. Yeah, I think there's this thing about people who are in horrible situations, laughing at people who are in better situations than them to comfort themselves. Maybe I'm just being cruel, but I think we should hold off on the laughter just for now. Maybe when we get out, maybe we can start laughing.
Probably. So I was thinking maybe we can embrace this. Now, what we're doing is we're creating social media videos to scrutinize the phone that looks like the original, and I'm like, I think we should learn and not laugh at them because these guys were smart enough to do this, and we know that they are also building their own, they're assembling their own cars. They can build road. They can literally do almost everything. So why don't we learn from them? I think I'll be more than happy to go to China and learn and come back and start inventing stuff here. That should be a mind, something for the thought.
Go look up a shoe called Anta. Okay, it
Mhm.
is actually competing with Nike. They've even got NBA players now wearing their sneakers. You'll find that Anta started as a father and his two sons who used to produce sneakers for other companies. So they were actually learning by producing like these main Reebok and those ones for China.
Yeah.
Then they figured out how to produce their own shoe and they learned. So as these people are learning to knock off phones, haven't you noticed that Chinese started by knocking off phones? Now they've started to create their own brands. So they started by learning the process before they started building their own. Now you're laughing making social media videos that make zero money, while at least they're making money with their knockoff phones. Just saying. Anyway, I'll
We'll
leave
end my
that.
thoughts there.
Everyone, have a wonderful day. See you all tomorrow. Tune in tomorrow as I give you my budget submissions. What should we be looking for? Brendan, have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You have a good one.